evening, everyone. This morning during our very good Bible class, we came to speak about Nehemiah, and that reminded me of some things that I had recently learned about Nehemiah, and I could not help myself but prepare a lesson with that information in it. And when I was almost finished, I looked at the sermon and I thought, I should have just given this to Kevin for next Bible class. Sorry about that, buddy. I hope I don't steal any of what you have prepared. But I just really wanted to cover this information, and you'll see when I get to it. First, we're going to look at some information, maybe some basic information, some that you've already seen. The lesson begins in Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2, if you want to open up your Bible and follow along. And it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, that I took the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had never been sad in his presence before. Therefore the king said to me, Why is your face sad, since you are not sick? This is nothing but sorrow of heart. So I became dreadfully afraid. And those of you who don't know, no one was allowed to be sad in the presence of the king. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to see it. He didn't want to think it. Your problems are absolutely irrelevant. I'm the king and I've got too many things to worry about. I don't need to think about your problems as well. So that's why it says that he was dreadfully afraid. And he said to the king, May the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire? Then the king said to me, What do you request? So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said to the king, If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Then the king said to me, the queen also sitting beside him, How long will your journey be, and when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Furthermore, I said to the king, If it pleases the king, let letters be given to me for the governors of the region beyond the river, that they must permit me to pass through until I come to Judah. And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he must give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel, which pertains to the temple, for the city wall, and for the house that I will occupy. And the king granted them to me according to the good hand of my God upon me. Then I went to the governors in the region beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard of it, they were deeply disturbed that a man had come to seek the well-being of the children of Israel. So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I arose in the night, I and a few men with me. I told no one what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem, nor was there any animal with me except the one on which I rode. And I went out by night through the valley gate to the serpent wall and the refuse gate, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates which were burned with fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, but there was no room for the animal under me to pass. So I went up in the night by the valley and viewed the wall. Then I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done. I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and or the others who did the work. Then I said to them, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be reproach. And I told them of the hand of my God, which had been good upon me, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, let us rise up and build. Then they set their hands to do good work. I want to stop right there just in case I forget to say this. Many, many years have passed since the return with Zerubbabel, as mentioned earlier this morning. Many, many years. And it's embarrassing. It's shameful that the walls of the city are not built. And he goes, not bringing with him a workforce. He goes to talk to the workforce. And what does that workforce say? The same people who were not getting the job done, they say, let us rise up and build. He tells them some very important things. He says this phrase, the good hand of the Lord was upon me. And then he shows them evidence of that by the fact that this king, who's not at all an Israelite, is backing the work with all of this treasure, all of these building materials. All that was lacking was somebody faithful to God. Somebody to take the people who were failing and change them into people who could get the job done. So they said, after all those years, so they said, let us rise up and build. Then they set their hands to do this good work. But when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, and Geshem, the Arab, heard of it, they laughed at us and despised us and said, what is this thing that you are doing? Will you rebel against the king? So I answered them and said to them, the God of heaven himself will prosper us. Therefore, we, his servants, will arise and build. But you have no heritage or right or memorial in Jerusalem. This is an amazing story about the history of our people when things were absolutely negative and they returned to positive. Of all the stories that you could take from the Bible and make a tremendous movie out of, this one is one of them, in my opinion. This guy, Nehemiah, is absolutely easy to make interesting just from the words of the book. I'm not going to tell you, I don't have the time to tell you all the things. But it would take a tremendous star to play Nehemiah. It would take somebody amazing. Maybe George C. Scott, who's gone, of course. I don't know who I would cast in this role. It's absolutely a tremendous thing what happens here. So a little bit of background. Forgive me, you probably know this. Nehemiah was a cupbearer for Artaxerxes. And in the 20th year of his reign, his brother, Nehemiah's brother, comes back and tells him the bad news. That the walls were broken down and the city was in danger and they were in shame. This report made him sad, as we read. And And he requested a leave of absence to rebuild the walls in Jerusalem. Now, there were plans for the work. Nehemiah went to Jerusalem, was there for 3 days, not by coincidence. He was there surveying the walls. He told them why he had come. He challenged the people to rebuild the walls, the same people who were not getting the job done. And then he put each family in charge of a certain section of the wall to rebuild. He gave them responsibility. He gave them accountability. If this part of the wall is not getting done, we know who to talk to. They were the same people. They were the same crew. But now a man with the good hand of the Lord upon him was there to get the job done. And that's exactly what happened. Now we're talking about Nehemiah. As I mentioned before, he's tremendous in real life. His character is unbelievable. It's amazing. He has a sympathy for the people. He's great. If you read his prayers, it's a great example of how to pray. The humility, the use of God's word in the prayers, the confidence that his God hears his prayers. Tremendous man of prayer. And he lived a life of faith. Think about that. This guy was not at home, if you will. He was not surrounded by all of the best like you are. He was by himself and working in the throne room of a pagan. But he was a great leader and a great organizer, by the way. He was upright and he was courageous. Now, this is one of the things that I find to be interesting. We think about a cupbearer. Up until recently, I didn't think much of that position. I thought, here's an idea, here's an interesting thing. Here's a guy who's a nobody who comes to Judah and becomes governor. Well, I was wrong. I'm not afraid to say I was wrong, because I'm human. When I read up on this, I found out that the cupbearer he's not a busboy. The king needed a special man to be the cupbearer. They needed someone that they didn't mind being around, first of all, because he's going to be with them all the time. Every time he needs a drink, that guy is there. So he's got to be somebody that you want to be around. And it has to be someone that they trust. Again, this is about life and death. The cupbearer is the one who takes a drink of everything that the king's going to drink. And by the way, sleight of hand, if you are easy to pay off or if you're easily scared, you can take something after you taste it and then put it in with the king and then he's gone. So, again, this is not just some guy, some slave, some poor sap who got his number pulled that day. This was a close person to the king, which explains why he did not die when he was sad, and he gets sent out to go home. He's trusted to go home and come back. This is somebody who's trusted by the king. Someone who could, by the way, hear secrets. He's in the throne room constantly as the king's talking to his people. He's hearing all kinds of things. He's got to be trusted not to share the plans of the king. And the king loved his cupbearer. This is the guy we're talking about. Not just anybody. This guy is important. He is someone who is trusted and loved and appreciated, and he's the kind of guy you're just glad is around all the time. Now, he goes to do this work. And I don't want this to be lost on us, because it's still the things that we go through today. He's going to do a good thing. Understatement of the night. He's going to do a good thing, and when he's going to do a good thing, the enemy wants to stop it. This guy, Sanballat and Tobiah, tried to discourage and disrupt the work. They had nothing better to do but to laugh about the work, really. They first tried to demoralize the people. Interestingly enough, I want you to see the sway of what's going on. Decade after decade after decade, these enemies were accomplishing something with their discouraging words and their laughter and their sneering and their looking down their nose. Oh, is that what you believe? And it was working until Nehemiah shows up, and he's not afraid of that whatsoever. He's got boldness about him, and you'll probably read later he's got a little too much boldness, but nevertheless, we see a different guy here who, with this attitude, no. The one who should be laughed at is you. That was his attitude. That turns everything around. You have no right. In fact, you're not even going to be remembered after this. You're nothing. The people of God, they're the ones who have the victory. They first tried to demoralize, and it was working for decades. Nehemiah 4:3, now Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, whatever they build, even if a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall. Yeah, right. You're going to build a wall. Whatever. You're stupid. You think the world is flat. You think that, that you believe in miracles. That's the way they talked. They made stupid little jokes. But the enemy can be very victorious that way unless you refuse to take that ridicule. They would organize the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites to even fight against Jerusalem. That's what he was dealing with. So they had to be quick. But how can you do that quickly? Well, there was a way. And they got it done. Now, they took precautions, but the work continued. Chapter 4, verse 6, it says, we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Something changed. Now they had a mind to work. They dealt with the problems. As you know, they were told in some cases, to have a carpenter tool, a mason tool in one hand, and a weapon in the other hand. Whatever it takes, let's get the job done. No more excuses. They even had to deal with a famine. During the reconstruction, a famine occurred, and the famine causes great economic problems. By the way, I remind you, God is still God when this famine comes. God's the one that sees to it that it's supposed to rain. He could have avoided the famine if he wanted to, but no, it's there and it's written in the books so that you and I can know even when something is super important, God expects you to go through difficulty. God expects you to look at the enemies and the natural occurrences and say, what does the Word of God say? I'm doing it no matter what gets in my way. They had to borrow money. They even back then there was a thing where you would sell yourself into slavery to get the job done. Nehemiah rebuked the nobles for charging high interest rates, and he returned the land and released the poor from their indebtedness. And the walls were completed. The job was done. Nehemiah 6 verse 15, so the wall was finished on the 25th day of Elul, in 52 days. And it happened when all our enemies heard of it, and all the nations around us saw these things, that they were very disheartened in their own eyes. And they perceived that this work was done by our God. Just a change in attitude. Same people, same enemies, different attitude. There were these beautiful events at the gate, like the water gate. Nehemiah 8:3, then he read from it, the book of the law, in the open square that was in the front of the water gate, from early morning until midday. Catch that. First light is what that means in Hebrew, till midday. No air conditioning, no padded pew. You know what else? No complaints. About 6 hours of reading. Wow. From early morning until midday, before the men and women and those who could understand, and the ears of all the people were attentive to the book of the law. So the whole assembly of those who had returned from the captivity made booths and sat under the booths. For since the days of Joshua, the sons of Nun, until that day, the children of Israel had not done so. And there was very great gladness. Also the Sabbath day. So it was, it says in Nehemiah 13, in verse 19, so it was at the gates of Jerusalem, as it began to be dark before the Sabbath, that I commanded the gates to be shut, and charged that they must not be opened until after the Sabbath. Then I posted some of my servants at the gates, so that no burdens would be brought in on the Sabbath day. No doubt this guy was special because he was the king's cupbearer. But what made him special? His character, his faith, his God made him special. He made the book because he believed in his God, to the point where it didn't matter what anybody said. He would boast in his God. He would swear of his God. He would not back down. Nehemiah heard his people were in danger and in shame, heard that they needed a leader, heard that they couldn't finish God's work. He left the throne room. He traveled far to rescue his people. Though he was in charge during the work, he refused to take the king's luxury. He was entitled to that, by the way, as the governor. He had extra money for his luxuries. He would not take that, the book says. He worked directly with the people. He was the chief builder and of the refurbishment. He did the impossible. People then are forced to admit, whether they wanted to or not, that God had to be with him. My favorite part of the whole story. He pointed to Jesus. I mean, it's good that we read the rest of the story of Nehemiah. You know, you've read it several times. You know this guy's not perfect. That's because he's not Jesus. But he made the book. Why did he make the book? Even though some of it's questionable, some of it's uh-oh. Because he points to the Christ, that's why. Have you heard of the Lamb's Book of Life? Yes, you have. And you're trusting that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. I got news for you. Just for my own thoughts. You don't have to take this. We don't have anything about that book except names are in there and they can be blotted out. That's all we know. But I really don't believe it's just a phone book. I don't know if I guess most people in here know what a phone book is. It used to be a big, thick book, about yay big. in your whole city was in that book. Well, I was from St. Louis. It was that thick. I don't know about Plant City, but nevertheless, in St. Louis we had this big book, and all it had was names and phone numbers, maybe addresses, I'm not sure. And you could call the phone company and say, I don't want to be listed. But if you didn't stop them, that's what was in that book. I don't think the Lamb's Book of Life is just full of names. I don't know for a fact, so correct me, I'm sure, fine. But when you read these people, and you see their imperfections, but that they pointed to the Christ, I want you to think about the Lamb's Book of Life. If your name is in there, it's because you pointed to the Christ. You pointed others to the Christ. Obvious you're not perfect. Obvious I'm not perfect. But if my name is in the book, I made the book because I point to the Christ. The other thing that I couldn't wait to say is that Jesus is our King and our cupbearer. Go with me to John 18. John 18 begins, when Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples over the brook Kidron, where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. And Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. Then Judas, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, came there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, "Whom are you seeking?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." And Judas, who betrayed him, also stood with them. Now, when he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Then he asked them again, "Whom are you seeking?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I have told you that I am he. Therefore, if you seek me, let these go their way, that the saying might be fulfilled which he spoke, of those whom you gave me, I have lost none. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? Shall I not drink the cup my Father has given me?" What did he do? What did Jesus do? You've heard the phrase from the Bible, the cup of the wrath and the anger of God. That's for those who sin, those who are imperfect. You see, he drank the cup of the wrath of God, and it killed him. He was your cupbearer. He died instead of us. The whole book is about Jesus, as well as should be. The whole book points to Jesus, as well as it should. It's my prayer that all of us are in the Lamb's Book of Life for a reason. That we point to Jesus. I pray that